At 24, I thought my life was finally settling into something stable. After years of drifting between odd jobs, I landed a steady position at a small bookstore in my hometown. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved the quiet aisles and the comforting smell of old paper. My younger sister Carla had just started school, and I was determined to give her a safe, normal life. I dreamed of returning to college someday, maybe even moving west for a fresh start. But none of that mattered one muggy July evening when a routine delivery changed everything, pulling me into a mystery that clawed at the edges of reality. That evening, orders were steady, but one stood out, a delivery to a quiet street near old downtown Lansing, a neighborhood filled with grand old houses long forgotten or rumored haunted. The address led me to a weathered Victorian home, its porch light flickering erratically like a heartbeat struggling to stay alive. The paint peeled and warped in the humid air, and the garden was overgrown, wild as if nature was reclaiming it. I knocked and called out pizza delivery, but silence answered back. After what felt like forever, a man finally cracked the door open just enough to slip cash through the screen. His tired eyes, heavy with shadows, and the dark stubble beneath the hood didn't sit right with me. A faint wet stain on his sleeve caught my eye. A shiver ran down my spine. I delivered the pizza, but the unease didn't leave. The next night, the same order came from the same address. This time, no porch light lit my way, only the faint flicker of a television glowing behind drawn curtains. The man again slipped cash to me, exact change, plus an unexpected tip. He barely spoke, eyes darting anxiously. The street felt unnervingly quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. Driving away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The street lamps cast long, wavering shadows, and when I glanced into my rearview mirror, I thought I saw a figure slipping between the trees. Over the next few days, strange things began happening. At work, books shifted on shelves, whispers floated through empty aisles. On my way home, the figure in a gray hoodie appeared more often, sometimes just a shadow behind me, sometimes standing motionless at the edge of a street corner, before vanishing when noticed. Was it my imagination? I hoped so, but the knot of fear tightened every time I looked back. Then came July 18th, the night that tore the veil off the ordinary. The delivery came again. The house was completely dark and silent. No TV glow, no flickering candle, no answer to my knocks. As I turned to leave, I heard footsteps crunch behind me on gravel. I spun, the air thick with cigarette smoke. The man from before was there, close enough that I could see the sharp knife glint in his hand. His voice was low, dangerous. "Are you alone?" I froze, heart pounding, adrenaline flooding. I fumbled for calm, gave him my wallet and phone. Then, in a flash, he slashed my palm before disappearing into the night. I stumbled to my car, blood dripping, hands trembling. Police later found the house abandoned for months. Neighbors whispered about strange comings and goings, shadows moving at odd hours, but no one ever got a clear look at the man. He vanished like a ghost, leaving me bleeding, shaken, and haunted by the terrible question: had he used the orders to lure me into a trap all along? Months passed, but the fear never faded. I patched my wound and replaced stolen belongings, but the violation lingered. Every time the phone rang late at night, every time I passed that street, the shadow of that night returned. My dreams of college and tech faded behind the dark memories. Pizza delivery was no longer just a job. It was the line I crossed into a world where danger waited patiently in silence. And though the man never returned, his presence never left. Jonathan had always been a night owl, but he especially cherished the quiet solitude that came with working late at his mid-sized accounting firm, located just on the edge of the city. The regular 9-to-5 chaos faded away by 7 p.m., leaving the office empty save for a few stragglers and the hum of computers in sleep mode. For Jonathan, these late-night hours were gold. No distractions, no constant ringing phones or people stopping by to chat, just pure focus to untangle complicated spreadsheets and reports. But as October crept in and the days shortened, something about the office after dark started to unsettle him. The parking lot, usually filled with the sound of footsteps and distant traffic, felt too still, eerily quiet, like the world had paused. The flickering overhead fluorescent lights cast long, jittery shadows down the sterile, white-walled corridors. It was the kind of silence that wraps around you like a cold blanket, making every sound sharp and every shadow sinister. One rainy evening, as Jonathan was stretching near his car after a long day, he felt a prickle on the back of his neck, a sensation of being watched. He spun quickly, eyes scanning the dark lot, but there was nothing there. only empty spaces and the occasional drip of rain from gutter pipes. He shook off the feeling and headed home, but the sense of eyes following him lingered far longer than he wanted. The next few nights only made things worse. Back at the office, Jonathan began to notice small, unsettling anomalies. Files on his desk would be slightly rearranged. His coffee mug occasionally moved an inch or two. He heard footsteps echoing down the hallway when no one else was there. Doors that should have been locked were found ajar. At first, he chalked it up to forgetfulness or a tired imagination, but the unease gnawed at him. Then came the note. It was taped crudely outside his office door one morning. Written hastily in thick black marker, a single word, "Hello." No signature, no explanation. Jonathan's heart hammered as he tore it down, hoping it was a joke, but minutes later he spotted the figure. The same black-hooded man, standing motionless in the parking lot outside. His face was hidden deep in the shadows cast by the hood, his posture unnervingly still. The man never spoke, never moved toward Jonathan, but he never left either. He was a constant presence lurking just beyond the edge of Jonathan's vision, a silent sentinel that haunted his late nights. Oddly, no one else at the office noticed anything strange. It was as if the man had singled Jonathan out. A week later, Jonathan's phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, he answered, but the line was filled with silence and static. No words, no breathing, just an oppressive weight of quiet that pressed down on his chest. The call ended abruptly, but the dread it left behind did not. From that night on, Jonathan refused to stay late alone at work. Every sound, every flicker of light, every creak in the wall sent his nerves into overdrive. He grew jumpy, constantly looking over his shoulder. The calm solitude he once cherished became a prison of anxiety. He confided in coworkers, but no one else had experienced anything unusual. His pleas to security were met with polite skepticism. It was as if the shadow belonged only to him. Jonathan wondered if the hooded figure was real, or a ghost born of stress and isolation, but deep inside, he knew the threat was tangible. Jonathan Parker's worries didn't stop at the office. As a single father raising his 6-year-old daughter, Nubbles, his world was a delicate balancing act. Working from home in the evenings gave him time to be with her, but little rest for himself. He treasured those quiet moments after bedtime, moments shattered one warm May night. At nearly 11 p.m., a sudden pounding shattered the silence. Jonathan jumped, heart racing. The doorbell camera showed a young woman standing outside, eyes wide with terror. She claimed she'd been followed for blocks and begged to come inside. Acting on instinct, Jonathan unlocked the door, letting her in and locking it behind her. The house felt safe, for a moment. Minutes later, the pounding started again, but louder, more aggressive. 3 men wearing dark hoodies appeared, shouting demands. The woman's whispered warnings urged Jonathan not to open, but chaos erupted anyway. A heavy glass struck Jonathan's head, his vision swimming, pain blurring his senses. The intruders stormed inside, ransacking the home with terrifying efficiency. Despite the chaos, Jonathan's greatest relief was that Nubbles was unharmed, hiding quietly in a closet. When Jonathan regained consciousness, the house was wrecked, valuables stolen, memories shattered. The woman was gone. Police later explained that the woman was likely part of a scam, criminals using fake victims to gain access to unsuspecting homeowners. Her identity remained unknown, and the men vanished without a trace. Jonathan's trust in others was irrevocably broken. His home, once a sanctuary, felt vulnerable and exposed. The experience left deeper wounds than any physical injury. Nightmares haunted his sleep. The silent watcher in the office, the woman at his door, both were masks, concealing danger lurking just beneath the surface of everyday life. Jonathan learned the hard way that sometimes the greatest threats wear the face of someone pleading for help, and that safety is never guaranteed. Jonathan Parker's life in Cleveland had settled into a careful rhythm, balanced precariously between his demanding career as a systems analyst and the responsibilities of raising his 6-year-old daughter, Nubbles. Being a single father meant his days were a juggling act. Morning rushes to school, late-night work emails, bedtime stories, and stolen moments of laughter amidst the exhaustion. Their modest home in a quiet neighborhood was their sanctuary, a place Jonathan protected fiercely from the chaos of the outside world. Most nights, after Nubbles was tucked in, Jonathan would sit at his kitchen table, finishing work or catching up on emails. The soft hum of the computer and the faint glow of the desk lamp were comforting constants. But one warm May night shattered that fragile calm forever. The clock had just ticked past 11 p.m., when a sudden pounding rattled the front door, sharp and urgent enough to send a jolt through Jonathan's chest. He wasn't expecting anyone, and the darkness outside made the familiar sound feel like a harbinger of something wrong. Jonathan's hand trembled slightly as he grabbed his phone and glanced at the doorbell camera. There, standing on the porch, was a young woman, pale, trembling, her eyes wide with fear. Her clothes were disheveled, and her voice quivered as she explained she had been followed for several blocks by unknown men. Something in her panic, her desperation, stirred Jonathan's protective instincts. Without hesitation, he unlocked the door and invited her inside, bolting the door firmly behind her. In that moment, it felt like a simple act of kindness, a stranger seeking refuge from danger. But safety, Jonathan soon realized, was only an illusion. The woman collapsed into a chair, tears streaming as she recounted her ordeal, shadows lurking behind her, whispers of threats that chased her through darkened streets. Jonathan offered water and soft words, trying to soothe her frayed nerves. But the pounding at the door returned, this time louder, more insistent. Jonathan's heart hammered in his chest. 3 men dressed in dark hoodies were banging on the door, shouting demands to be let in. Panic gripped the room like a vice. The woman urged Jonathan in a whisper not to open, fear etched deep in her eyes. But before he could respond, a heavy object smashed through the glass panel beside the door, sending shards flying. A sharp blow to his head blinded him briefly. The world spun out of control. The intruders stormed inside, their presence violent and chaotic. Jonathan's last clear memory was the frantic rush to protect Nubbles before darkness claimed him. When he awoke, the house was unrecognizable. Drawers were overturned, valuables missing, memories scattered across the floor. Yet, through the haze of pain, the one comforting sight was his daughter, silent and unharmed, hiding in a small closet, her wide eyes reflecting the trauma of the night. The nightmare had ended, but its shadow stretched long and cold. Police arrived quickly, but the damage was done. Their investigation revealed a disturbing pattern. The woman was almost certainly part of a calculated scam. Criminals use fake victims to gain entry to unsuspecting homes, creating chaos and fear before vanishing into the night with stolen goods. Her identity was never confirmed, and the men were long gone before any meaningful leads could be found. Jonathan's sense of security was shattered. His home, once a refuge, felt exposed and vulnerable. The feeling of betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. How could he have been so sure the woman was telling the truth? The realization that danger could wear the face of desperation, exploiting kindness, was a lesson learned in the harshest way possible. Recovery was slow, not just the physical healing, but the emotional scars that lingered long after. Nightmares haunted Jonathan's sleep. Every unexpected sound outside the door stirred panic. Trust became a fragile thread, easily broken by fear. Jonathan's experience became a chilling reminder of the thin line between compassion and caution. In a world where danger can hide behind pleas for help, every decision carries weight. The woman at the door, whether victim or accomplice, symbolized a threat cloaked in vulnerability. Life eventually returned to a semblance of normal, but the memory of that night never faded. Jonathan remained vigilant. The locks on his doors reinforced, security cameras installed. His love for Nubbles fueled his determination to protect her from any shadow lurking beyond their walls. Yet, late at night, in the quiet moments when the world is still, the fear lingers, a whisper in the dark reminding him that safety is never guaranteed, and the stranger at the door might come again, wearing a different mask.